for joining us tonight. Thank you to everyone who is here as well.
Amen.
We certainly appreciate you tuning in, and we also appreciate you clicking that little like button. And there's a bell up there that'll notify you whenever we are live. So go ahead and click on that, and when we have new videos that are posted. So go ahead and click those buttons and share. Push it out there to your friends, your family, and all the Facebook gremlins that follow you. And don't forget that if you are receiving something from this ministry and you feel like you would like to give into this ministry, there's a link in the comment section below where you can go online and give. So, again, certainly thankful to be here with my brosifs, Mr. Alfred Moses, and Alfredo Sauce, as Brent calls him, and little Brent Grigg. What up? B Rental, I call him. Sometimes I call him all sorts of things. Just don't call him late for dinner.
God bless it. That's right.
But actually, we're coming off the heels of Brent speaking on Sunday, the Sophiology of Becoming Human, right? That was it?
What it was.
Yeah, okay. So the wisdom, right? The wisdom of becoming human. What does it look like to be human? And really, he showed us that through the lens of Christ as that fourth part of God that is wisdom from the Old Testament or from the ancient texts, right? Where Sophia, this word for wisdom, or the goddess of wisdom, even that Sophia is seen as this fourth part of God. Like this is just another iteration of God in the world or in creation or in reality, right?
Divine attribute.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the way that Sergei Bulgakov, or Bulgakov, however you pronounce it, who was a Russian Orthodox theologian, and during a very difficult time when Marxism was beginning in Russia, who initially bought into Marxism, left Christianity, left faith altogether, because that's what he was raised in, and kind of sold himself over to Marxism, and then says, all right, this is not for me. And says, I'm gonna get out of this, and I'm gonna, instead of selling my soul to this, I'm gonna sell my soul completely to God.
Wow.
And the ministry. He goes into the Orthodox ministry, gives himself over to it, becomes one of their greatest theologians, and then starts and gets ousted. He gets sent out of the country.
Wow.
Well, they blackballed him entirely. But part of it was the theology. Part of it was the adamants that he had against Marxism, and, and a lot of that, because Marxism wasn't as friendly to Christianity,
right?
So that made it difficult for him. But he talked about this thing that was introduced in Russian Orthodox theology called Sophiology, and it was how Sophia was this divine attribute of God, and he sort of challenged the idea of the Trinity being, all right, well, maybe God is more than just three persons. Maybe God is many divine attributes and still is one God that we worship every day, and just maybe there's more to it. And part of that was what didn't lead to a great outcome for him. He was ultimately gathered right back in and allowed back in, and was respected because he went to Paris, started a school there, and all of the theology that he put out from Paris, it influenced people like Karl Barth and numerous. I mean, Pannenberg, Wolfhart Pannenberg, you name it. There's a lot of them out there that his work influenced in kind of a great way. So, but the whole point, again, Sophiology being this divine wisdom that is God, and this divine wisdom that God instills within mankind, within creation, and Bulgakov was one of the first to talk about panentheism, spoke against pantheism. They're saying that God is, these inanimate objects, or that God is that, but that panentheism was that God dwelled within it. He used the all in all.
Yeah.
He was very good at it. It was very good stuff.
Dwells within creation. I think N.T. Wright says that if he had to label himself, he's a theopanentheist.
That's right.
Theopanentheist. That God does dwell within all things because Christ is all in all. So in terms of the created world, God is living and breathing within all of those creations, and including your humanity, right? and that's where we learned from Sunday, what it looks like to be human from that perspective of that sociology, that inborn wisdom that God has placed within us to express our divinity and humanity all at the same time, all wrapped up in this one beautiful package, that we do call humanity.
Yeah.
I just saw a comment, sorry. I saw Alfredo sauce up there. That was awesome.
I love it.
Man, I thought Sunday was just fantastic.
Yeah.
It really, really, really spoke to me. And I heard Bishop Kello telling you the same thing just a minute ago. It's just very, very relatable, very, very universal in how you applied it. And just you brought everybody into this idea of sociology, which is not an easy term to tackle, and when you look at it. But then once you start getting into it, it's like, man, this is just who we are.
Yeah.
This is just so. My question for you is, from Sunday, what was your favorite thing that you said?
Oh gosh,
pick one.
All right, the first thing that comes to mind was the breath. That's the first thing that pops in my head. Was the breathing, because I'd heard it from he's over the divinity department in Aberdeen, but he had said it, and he talked about how breath is meant to be expensed, and how you can't save any breath. There's there's no possible way to do that. So it's the constant cycle of receiving and letting go, and how the earth provides you that oxygen that goes into your body and is nutrient rich and helps carry blood throughout your body, and then breathe out the carbon dioxide, and how the creation absorbs that, eats it up, and it's the same thing from the song that he wrote that
which
we
came
sing
from Bishop Kelly.
Yeah, so it's the same
circle. It's a big reciprocal thing in here as well.
It is, but it's just one big circle, and so how you can't save it to hold on to it.
So good.
And I made that one remark to it. It's where Jesus says that if a man seeks to save his life, you'll lose it.
Yeah.
If you try to save your breath, you'll die, because you'll hold on to it until eventually the poison just stays within your body, and that's ultimately the thing that kills you. You have to expel the poison.
Yeah.
You have to expel everything that's in there. And what that for me, what it led to for the favorite thing is that part right there. But what it made me think of was when I was in Hebrews 2, where he says he destroyed the one that had the power of death, that is the devil, to release them who had the fear of death, who had the fear of death this whole time. So he talks about how it's the devil, or diabolos, it's traducer, or the one that's an accuser, or it's a false accusation.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then you think back through Matthew 16, when Peter is there and, who do men say that I am? And all right, he's feeling big and bad. And then, 10 verses later in same chapter, get behind me, Satan, because you're separating me. And that's what Jesus says. You're a stumbling block to me. Mm-hmm. And it's a stumbling block to prevent Jesus from doing the things that he was suffering willingly. So you're preventing me from becoming human. You're impeding me from living. Yep. It's like, no, you're going to die. No, that's me living. Me dying is me living. Right. And that's what Ignatius told those folks in Rome. Don't impede my martyrdom, because that's me living.
Yeah.
This is the chance for me to live, and to live the same life that my Savior lived. So it's breathing and expelling the breath, and it's releasing desire.
Yeah. It's
releasing whatever is within that you hold most dear.
Yeah.
All those things that you think you have to hold on to, that, well, this makes me who I am. Mm-hmm. This is my reputation. This is my name. This is everything that people say about me in the community. This is my house. This is my wealth. This is all this stuff.
Yep.
And that material stuff ultimately equates to nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's not you.
And even relationships. I am my marriage, or who I'm married to, or, because sometimes that can bring along status and things like that.
Absolutely.
And the Buddhists would, they would call that attachment, right? Mm-hmm. And that you have to learn to become detached from those things,
right.
Even those intimate relationships that you have, in a sense. Like you can't be so attached to it that, that's what essentially what you worship, right? Yep. Because that's what it boils down to. Is like you're going to worship that thing. You're going to put that before, just call it servant leadership.
Where your heart is, where your treasure is.
Absolutely.
It's wherever your heart is. So if your heart is in it, that's where you're going to worship. It's what your attention is on. That's what you put the most value into.
And you wouldn't freely give your love or your time or your efforts to other things because you're so focused on holding on to that one thing, whatever it is, or maybe it's multiple things, but you're so focused on holding on to those things that you want, to your point from Sunday, like when I give love, I should give it. I forget
wastefully.
Wastefully. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. So it was like breathe wastefully. Well, it was like that should be the way that you love. Love wastefully. Yeah. Love as if you can't hold your breath any longer and you have to. You have to expel it.
Yeah, it's a John Spong, Bishop John Spong phrase. He's an old man from around here. Went to Virginia, went to New Jersey, became a bishop, an Episcopal bishop. But that's what he would say all the time: love wastefully.
Yeah, I love that.
You want to get it back, just let it go.
Yep. So. Yeah, love as if you're not going to get it back.
So tonight we're calling this the wisdom of losing is the wisdom of living.
Yeah.
So my question off the bat, now that we know what your favorite thing is, what is the wisdom of losing?
So for me, I think, all right, so one thing that I didn't bring up, because, you only have so much time.
Correct.
And it can become really complex if you do this. So with Josh bringing up the Gnostic text, which we send love out to him since he wasn't able to be here tonight. But these Gnostic texts, one of them was the Secret Gospel of John.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives this mythological story of Sophia and how it says that Sophia, out of desire, not out of listening to the Spirit, said that she didn't receive permission, basically, or didn't discuss it. It literally kind of says it that way. There was no discussion with the Spirit for Sophia to procreate. So she has this, this being, and the being that's born immediately gets a taste of power. So Sophia, wisdom or divine wisdom, gives birth to this being, and she names him Yaldabaoth, which is it could be ancient Aramaic word for chaos. So she gave birth to chaos out of wrong desire. And I think that let me make sure that I read it and say it properly because I liked it. In the Secret Gospel of John, says that, and when she saw the consequences of her desire, how it changed into a form, it became a lion-faced serpent, and that was the child that she gives birth to. She had created it in ignorance. So it was out of, she thought without the consent of the Spirit and the knowledge of her agreement, yet she brought it forth. So that's the first thing that catches my attention, is how this supposed divine wisdom, how it's sort of, like I said, it's mythological story, but it's how it's shaped outside of the Spirit, outside of inspiration, which immediately made me think of what I read out of James chapter 3, is that the three things that he says, that the wisdom that's from down here is earthly, uninspired by the Spirit, and demonic.
Yeah.
So and immediately what happens when she gives birth to this lion-faced serpent is, he names him Yaldabaoth. It goes through this story of all this power that he begins to attain, and then tries to pull the power from his mother and pull the power from all these other divine beings, make himself great. And they call him the arrogant one. So by the time it gets to the sort of towards the end of the story, she's trying to make it right. And one of the things that it says of Yaldabaoth, and the arrogant one took a power from his mother, for he was ignorant, thinking that there existed no other except his mother alone. And when he saw the multitude of angels which he had created, then he exalted himself above them. So that was constantly pulling in power to himself, constantly pulling in power. So what Sophia has to do, and it was towards the end of the story, and our sister Sophia is she who came down in innocence in order to rectify her deficiency. Therefore, she was called Life, which is the mother of the living, by the foreknowledge of the sovereignty of heaven. And then it's the words are missing from the text, so it's kind of hard to translate that last line there. But that I might teach them and awaken them out of the depth of sleep. So the point of it is that she enters into Adam, who the divine Sophia enters into Christ to teach that, and really to awaken. Yeah. Because what Yaldabaoth did through his power was trap souls in human form, and they never could escape. Constantly trapped within this humanity. So what he did is, to me, if I, when I read it interpretively or archetypally, say that five times fast. You probably could. I don't know. I can't. But to read it, symbolically rather, is that he was created, he gains all this power to himself, and then creates all these other images of power. Right. Creates all these other images of gain power. And what it does is it traps the soul. Yeah. You seek to save your life, you lose it. Yep. But if you lose your life, you'll find it. Yes. So here is this divine character who has to be harnessed by Jesus Christ, living the divine wisdom, but in doing so, it says that he awakens all the other beings, and now their soul is able to be released from just mortal flesh. Yeah. So it's very interesting story, but it still leans into that divine wisdom, making things right by awakening us to release, awakening us to losing, letting go, awakening us to a wisdom that, when James said it, and again in James 3, it's first pure. A wisdom that is first pure. It's innocent. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's it. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So it's letting go of anything that is desire, which ultimately, for me, it leads back to what God tells Moses while he's in the cleft of the rock, and Moses says, "Let me see your face," in Exodus 33:20. And then God tells Moses, "No man has ever seen me and lived. Mm-hmm. No man has ever seen my face and lived." Therefore, for me to think through it from a New Testament perspective, you're not going to see God and still hold on to your desire. That's good. You're not going to see God and hold on to all of the stuff. You're not going to see God and hold on to your breath and hold on to your life and hold on to your money and hold on to your status and hold on to everything that you've gained. You're not going to be able to see God and live. To see God means your desire dies. Yeah. All that is relinquished. Yeah. So for me to walk out of here, or me to stand in here and see God, I have to die. Yep. I have to relinquish that life to be able to submit to giving myself the way that Jesus did, who shows us what it means to be human, not by all the miracles, not by necessarily the teachings, but how he willingly goes and surrenders himself to die and loses. There's no point. I mean, there's no arguing that. He loses. Yeah. And they're down there at the foot of the cross shaking hands because they won. Yeah. They got exactly what they wanted. They got rid of Jesus. Yep. But what happens is something gets kick-started. Yeah. Something else is inaugurated. Yeah. A new way of living gets inaugurated. Yeah. A new way of living in all of these people who are laying down their life and saying grace and peace. Yep. Right. And it's that. So that's it. That's, to me, that's losing. Right. That's sort of, I know that maybe takes it as a big idea, but down on the micro level, it's as simple as, like I said, to see God in somebody else means to surrender all of the things that you think you know. Surrender all of the things that you want to hang on to that says you won't help or you won't hold this person, you won't comfort them or go through their hard time with them, or not hold on so much even to your money or to whatever it is that you think and you hold so dearly that you will not give to help somebody. Mm-hmm. That's what it is.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to kind of throw into this losing idea is you really honed in on the idea that it's not so much gaining or addition. Yeah. It's not an addition, and I feel like the kingdom and church, as we've spent so much time adding these things to our repertoire of our catalog of belief or whatever it may be, our ego. We're adding this, we're adding that, and then we think about the simplicity of the gospel that says, if you seek the kingdom first, then all these things will be added unto you. Yeah. So how do you seek the kingdom? Well, you have to lose everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you basically have to lose everything you're trying to build. Wow. Everything you're trying to build as far as status, reputation, ego, make yourself of no reputation, lose to really have anything added unto you. And then it's really when you take your mind off having things added that you really get to experience life, period.
Right.
You get to see God in your brother or your sister or your mother or your father or whoever. It's and we hit on this yesterday, you and I, a little bit, but this whole idea of I have to add these things to myself. I have to believe. I have to do all these things better. I have to read more, pray more, do more, work harder, right? I have to, and then I'll be better and I'll gain more, and it's all this system of ego building that you have to say, well, wait a minute. If you remove all that and start subtracting, and I think you've said this talking about the internal family systems a lot, when it's really not you trying to discover some new version of you and add that new version or become that new version, it's really identifying the things that are not you.
Yeah.
Subtracting those things, taking those things away, cutting away those things. That's losing, man. And that's what Jesus did when he made himself of no reputation. Like, that's losing everything or gaining everything. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's something that has really just freed me personally to say, I'm not trying to add anymore. Yeah. I'm not trying to be anymore. I'm trying to identify the things that that I'm definitely not.
Yeah.
Right? I'm definitely not supposed to be worried about all the stuff Jesus told me not to worry about.
Right.
Right? Like, take no thought for tomorrow. Well, what am I going to think about then? Because like our whole mind is like built on worrying about tomorrow. Like, well, take no thought for tomorrow, and we take that so lightly. But he said that. Yeah. Take no thought for tomorrow. Yeah. No thought. And then when you really start thinking about that, if you're taking thought for tomorrow, you've already started the equation where you're adding more to try to become more, to try to do more and be more.
Right.
But take no thought for tomorrow all of a sudden says, all right, you're trying to add here. Let's subtract what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
You're taking thought for tomorrow. So you take that away, what are you left with? You're left with yourself.
Yeah.
And eternal nothingness.
Yeah.
The eternal nothingness and eternal everything that you are. Like in that moment, you're not trying to add or take away. You're just identifying, I am me. I'm in this moment. And then you become pliable. That's the thing, is like you become hard. Like we talked about this before. Once you start lifting spiritual weights and doing all these things, you become old, strong, hard, rigid, tough, stone-faced. But it's in the weak and in the tender and the pliable things, the soft things. Yeah. So you can't build up your ego and continue to. You can't grow. You can't grow that way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Paul said that it's in the foolishness is that he takes the weak things to confound the wise. Takes the weak things that confound the strong. Takes the foolish things that confound those that are wise. Yeah. You think that you've got it all figured out, and he takes these things that are against the conventional wisdom or against what would be the status quo normal, and then that's the stuff that he uses.
Yeah.
Not the illustrious things. That's what he's saying. It's not all the things you added to yourself. It's all the stuff that you think would be letting go.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing of like I can't remember if I said this Sunday or not, but it's the thing that every living human has in common is that they were born and that they die. Not everybody's heart works the same. Not everybody's the same height, thankfully. But not everybody looks the same. But there's the main similarity that every single person alive, every human has, is that they are born and that they die.
Yeah.
That is the main criteria. That is the main thing that everybody has in common. But in birth, and he sent us this video the other day. about this
so wild.
Dr. Dyer, I think, where he says that how the baby in the womb and even the baby that's born steady.
Steady.
How the baby that's born is not thinking, well, I really hope I get a really good nose.
My face is okay.
I hope my face is okay. I hope I'm not hideous. Or I hope my parents have enough money to take care of me. You know, I don't know. I have no idea. They're not worried about that. What the only thing that you know from the outside as an observer is that baby, this child, is totally reliant on another.
Yeah.
And it takes however many people, whether it's the one parent, two parents, or the 100 people, or the village that supposedly is said that it takes to raise a child. Whatever the village or the tribe is that takes to raise that baby, it's people surrendering their will, their desires, whatever it is, to help that child be whatever it is going to be.
Right.
To feed him or her, provide for them, give them shelter, teach them how to walk, how to talk, let them discover all of that kind of stuff. But he said in the video, it's like, okay, all right, God, you did a great job. We'll take it from here.
Yes.
And that's what we do. And that's sort of the point that I was getting at too. When you get to the end, the only real way to surrender is through death. Because once you're born, you immediately start the process. We got to get him in a good school. We got to get him in kindergarten. We got to get him, or pre-K. He's got to know his ABCs.
Get him dressed in good clothes.
They got to look good, for God's sake.
Got to have new shoes.
Right.
New clothes.
That's right. Everything's got to be a certain. And then what you do is you're instilling the fear. You're instilling the fear of death in them.
Yep.
Like, well, oh God, what if I don't have the right clothes? Or what if I don't look like everybody else? It's the fear of death. Well, what if I have a stutter? What if I don't talk like everybody else, Moses? Well, all right, well, I've got the fear of death.
Yeah.
And what it does, we keep instilling the fear of death by accusation, by false accusations. This is where he says it was the devil that had the power of death, but destroys the one that has the power of death to remove the fear of death. So it's this false accuser, this false accusation of telling me that I am not, telling me that I'm separate, telling me that I'm not a part of God in some way. And so it creates this fear that perpetuates, and then you finally start to like, I'm going to let that go. I'm not my money, I'm not my clothes, I'm not my car, I'm not my home. And you start letting everything go. And then still at the end of the day, you can say, look at how great I died to myself today.
Yeah.
Look at how great I surrendered. Look at how well that I've crucified the flesh, until finally you physically die and you enter into the earth as a seed, and now you can truly cease from all your labor, and God can finally begin to do anything that he wants to do now.
It's the 6 components that make up the ego.
Yeah. That's
Dr. Wayne Dyer. This is the video you're speaking about, and might as well just hit these 6
Yeah,
components because
They're
they're really good. Here's the six components that make up the ego. Number 1, I am what I have. My possessions define me.
Yeah.
Number 2, I am what I do. My achievements define me. Number 3, I am what others think of me. My reputation defines me. Number 4, I am separate from everyone. My body defines me as alone. Number 5, I am separate from all that is missing in my life. And number 6, I am separate from God. And the more I thought about these 6 components that make up the ego, I couldn't help but think, what would God's response be to the 6 components that make up the ego? And it's simple. It's I am.
Yeah.
It is I am that I am. Yep. I am not all the things that I'm trying to be. I'm not what I have.
Right.
You have to say that.
Yep.
I'm not what I have.
Yep.
You want to, when that really becomes a reality, when you start losing stuff that you have.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, well, I'm not that anymore.
Yep.
Yep.
They came and took that car. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Thank God that hasn't happened to me. But
right.
Even if it did,
right.
I'm not that.
Right.
And that's another thing we're building our ego on. And that's a little. Did you hear that little bit
Absolutely.
in my language? Did you hear
that's never happened to me.
It's never happened. And it's so preconditioned in our ego, like, well, I've
Yeah.
never let nothing go back to the bank.
Yeah.
Well, that's something to be proud of. Well, that's just a little bit of ego there.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, because you're stacking all your wealth, you're stacking all your
accomplishments.
your accomplishments. Yeah. Well, I've never got a bad grade.
Yep.
Oh, I'm so glad I thought about this. This is exciting. So, all right, was it you I was talking about the report card with?
Probably.
Yes.
Yesterday.
Right.
I think so.
Right. All right. So think about this. I was asking Brent, do you think your mom, or no, it was Juice. I think it might have been Juice. So I asked Juice, I said, do you think your mom has all of your report cards? Like all of them. Do you think she saved all your report cards?
No.
And he's like, well, probably not. I said, okay, do you think she probably saved some kind of random handprint flower that you made in 2nd grade? He said, yeah, she's probably got that.
Yeah.
You think she saved this art project that you made out of a paper plate or these? And here's the idea. So we live our Christian life with this, I've got to keep my report card good, right? My report card has to be A's, right? I have to have good report card, good report card, good report card. And we're acting like Jesus is going to ask us, let me see all those report cards.
Wow. GPA.
So he made your mom, he made your dad in his image. He made us in his image, and we parent in this way. We don't keep all the report cards because it doesn't matter what Melody made in the 1st grade. It doesn't matter if she passed or she failed. It doesn't matter if she made a D or a E or a B or a C or a whatever. Whatever. None of that matters. But what does matter is the thing that I have on my refrigerator that she made in freedom. That she made from her identity. She made in that moment that she's not trying to pass a grade. She's not trying to earn a grade. She's not trying to keep her grades up. She's creating. Think about this. All right, I had her write this, and I didn't know that it was going to present itself this way. She's been writing a song.
Really?
My little girl, Melody, has been writing a song. She's been working on it for months now, okay? She sings it all the time. So I had her transcribe. I had her write down the lyrics. And this is the words of a 10-year-old going on 11-year-old girl. Get ready.
We're going to cry. Here we go.
Oh, you hold me tight in your arms, and you never let me go. You're protector, you protect me like a bird in a nest. You're worth thousands more than some coins in a chest. At night, when I lay down, you listen to all my prayers. And the next thing you know, they all come true. The reflection of the moon on the water is the touch of the heart of the Father, controlling my tide.
God.
Good Lord.
What in the world?
How high can I ride?
Say it again. Let's repeat that line. We're gonna give it one of these.
The reflection of the moon on the water is the touch of the heart of the Father, controlling my tide. How high can I ride? You're always with me, holding me tight. When I'm walking and scared, and want to hide. When I'm walking and scared and want to hide, then know you're always by my side. Oh, I'm wondering, oh, thinking, oh, knowing how high I can ride. You hold me tight. You're always by my side. You'll always, all right, so it gets a little swirly there. You'll always be with me, and that's why I love you. You're the protector. You're always walking with me at all times. You're with me forever, and this is great. I love it that it ended this way. One time I was at an Atlanta game, and my dad told me, you're always with me, protecting me, and I love you.
Goodness.
Out of the mouth of babes and sucklings, he has perfected praise.
Right.
Good.
He's completed the story. And sometimes we just need to get out of the way. We just need to get out of the way and stop trying to market it, stop trying to make it, stop trying to build it, and just listen to these babies running around in the temple crying Hosanna, and hear what they're saying. Hear what they're saying from their heart. Because there was no kind of agenda in that at all. And this is the thing that I will keep forever. I'm not going to keep her report card because it doesn't matter, because it's somebody's interpretation of her. This is her identity.
Right.
So I ask you, all those of you listening at home, are you saving report cards or are you making art? In your Christian walk, in your life, whatever you want to call it, in your own personal experience, in your relationship with God, are you making report cards? Are you trying to keep a report card roll, or are you trying to create every single day? Because if you wake up with the idea that I'm waking up to create, I'm waking up to manifest God in the earth, then you stop trying to keep all of your ducks in a row. Yep. And you stop trying to keep all your I's dotted and your T's crossed and making sure that God is not upset with your performance. Yep. Let me free you tonight. God is not upset with your performance. Yep. God is begging you to just be you. Yep. You. And you're like, yeah, but I got all this stuff. Well, that's exactly why Jesus came. Right. That's exactly why he did the things that he did. That's why he died the death, rose from the grave, so you could start anew. Be born anew. You hit that Sunday. Yeah. So good. Born from above. Right. Born from the very beginning. Right. Yeah. Man. All right.
I forgot about that Psalm 8 thing from Sunday. And I was going to tell you that afterwards, that because in Psalm 8, or what I thought about Sunday was when you were talking about that, we talked about the meaning behind the praise and all that. You know, completing the story or playing the part. You know, that you've fulfilled the role. You know, that kind of thing. And what I thought about was children. When people get around children, right, it brings out the best in them. I mean, even the toughest, most vile people, you know what I'm saying, the biggest biker dude. I mean, 99% of people, when they get around kids, they light up, right? They turn into a completely different person. It doesn't matter who they are, what their personality is. And in Psalm 8 too, it says, out of the mouth of babes and sucklings. The first word, babes, is the pictograph is roll or round. And it's a dancing in a circle, which we've talked about perichoresis and all that. So that took me down that road or whatever. But it means something that is round or around, or a second time around of a time or event. And it's like a rebirth,
right?
And it's like when you get in the presence of a child or someone who's is manifesting the childlike, that's when you get resurrected. You actually get to come a second time around. And a lot of times when you watch people, it's almost like that's what's happening. It awakens in them again the memory, or it helps them remember, right? It is a remembrance. It's the enlightenment. It's like somebody flipped the switch for them to go back in time and say, oh my gosh, I used to be like that. I used to have that hope in my eyes. I used to have that fire in my eyes, or whatever. And it's like they're rekindled in it in that moment, and they're brand new all over again. They're a child all over again. All those dreams, all those aspirations come alive in that moment right then and there. It's not impossible anymore. Even though life told them after 50 or 60 or 70 years that it's impossible, right? It's like, no, it's not impossible. It is 100% possible. Now, most of the time when they leave the presence of that child, they're brought right back into this current reality. But what you see too is that in folks that are much older, right, is they begin to kind of digress or regress into that childlike as they get closer and closer to death. It's like you're talking about being planted in the earth. It's like they begin to see again the hopefulness of the reality of the expression of whatever those dreams and aspirations and hopes and whatever it is that was alive in them from their childhood. It's like it's rekindled, or it's brought back to life. It's resurrected, or it happens a second time again. It comes back around. The other word was suckling, which is two words or two symbols, and it means to a child drawn in, like a child that's drawn to the breast of the mother, an infant that's drawn to the breast. And it's that, it's that sustenance, right? That's what keeps you alive. That's what pumps life into you, basically, right? And I just I've totally forgot to say that Sunday, but I was just like, oh man.
One of the reasons that Sergei Bulgakov wanted to leave Marxism was he said it gave no room to idealism. There's no imagination in it.
Oh my God.
You could say that again. They said there was no imagination in it. You had no room to imagine. You had no room to dream. And so he gets out of it. He goes into orthodoxy. He goes in to be a theologian, and he's like, well, my first big idea is let's tackle this thing. Let's tackle the Trinity for him. Let's tackle Sophia. Let's tackle divine wisdom. He said, because now you can dream. The cap is taken off.
Well, And you said something earlier when you were reading the what was the secret gospel?
Yeah,
John?
yeah.
And reading part of that story, you said something about, well, it's a myth, it's a mythological story. And I don't mean to be critical. I'm just saying you sort of dismissed it as a mythological story. But the truth
means it, and I mean it.
Well, I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, it
is. The truth is,
I caught it late. It's like I'm trying to overtly or covertly defend it. It's like, oh well, it's not this. It's not.
Don't defend it. Here's my thing.
But it's
be free, man.
Just do it.
Don't defend it because the truth is, these stories, right?
They're part of us.
They're real.
Yep.
They're more real than reality most of the time.
Right.
Right. They're almost hyper real.
Right.
There's so much reality in these stories, and you say, oh well, that's just a made up story. Well, I mean, okay. Well, what do you say about the resurrection of Christ? I mean, was it an actual physical bodily resurrection? I mean, I like to believe so.
Yeah.
But there is the argument that it's a myth. Okay, well, what do you say about that? Well, if it's a myth, then I have one of two choices. I can either dismiss it as, well, that's just a myth, or I can believe this is hyper real. This is so unreal that it's the most real. Right? And so I say that to say that, like, these stories that we talk about and these ideas that we talk about, it's like, this stuff is what makes up the fabric of our reality, right? Like that. This is where we get all this substance, right? Yep. This is where we get drawn into the breast.
Yep.
We're the child that's drawn in.
Yep.
So Juice wants us to kind of hit on something here. He says we raise children to do good things, works-based consciousness, to become grown-ups. Then when we should raise children to be good, transcendent divine consciousness. Let me start that again. We raise children to do good things, works-based consciousness, to become grown-ups. When we should raise children to be good, transcendent divine consciousness, to be one with the absolute. The material world will take care of itself. God is all. He said this is why Melody is manifesting her gifts and your proper sacrifice of allowing God to guide her namesake. Yeah. So, and that's the thing. It's like, man, it's wild to just see these things come. Like you plant these seeds in the earth, like naming a child.
Yeah.
There's something spiritual about naming the child.
Yep.
For me, and of course, like it's always something spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
But like even with, you could take somebody that's pagan or somebody that doesn't think spiritually at all. Like they're gonna put spirituality in naming a child, and you're sowing that faith into that name, whatever that name may be. And then here we are seeing these names. Now my daughter's name Melody, she was a mystery, and now we're starting to uncover the mystery.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? She was in the dark.
Yep.
She was in the dark place. There was a time before time that she was unearthed.
Yeah.
And now this bloom, this sprout has came forth, and we see not only is she fulfilling the prophecy, it's more than we could have ever imagined.
Absolutely.
That's the divine Logos. That's divine Sophia.
Yeah.
That's Sophia.
You know what? Like Hadley's name.
Yeah.
Hadley is she turns 13 tomorrow. All right. So Hadley is like a field of flowers. It's a certain type of flower, sometimes blue, sometimes purple. Which of these purple flowers you brought in here tonight? So it's like this field of these purple flowers. And Sophia is wisdom, so it's this wise flower, and how she's always doing that kind of stuff. And it removes me from defending stories like that and trying to make it more palatable. And sometimes we do that. At least I do that. I don't say everybody else, but I try to make something palatable so it's less offensive sometimes. But sometimes it's found in the provocative nature of it. And sometimes the most provocative thing you can say is the right thing because it might be the most divinely inspired thing. Yeah. And sometimes she says things that are provocative that I don't expect the 12, almost 13-year-old to say. And then especially talking about mythology, because she's super into it. She's into it like all the way for the same reason we've talked about before, the Percy Jackson novels, super into that, but then the actual mythology.
Yeah.
And then sometimes she'll ask a question about, she said, well, they built religion around that. Yeah, of course they did. She's like, well, we kind of did that too. We sort of built some religion around some mythology. I said, yeah, absolutely. And at first, the first response is like, no. This is fact-based thinking and we need to go back into your scientific mind. It's like, no, that's putting the cap back on it.
Yeah.
That's removing the imagination.
Yep.
Because now Paul's writings, there's not really a lot of mythological stuff there. He's fact-based thinking.
Yeah.
And it's going, and of course it introduces some great ideas about the love and the nature of God. But some of the other stuff, it seems very mythological.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff has been sort of proven to be that it was written so many hundred years after the fact that it was not written by the actual apostle Matthew or Mark or Luke. So there's a lot to it. And it lends itself back to that imaginative way of living.
Yeah.
And it's like I heard Pops over here was talking to Harmony when we got in here, and he's asking her about, he said, you got a pool at your house, right? And he starts, and says, what are you going to do when it's summertime? You're going to get in the pool? And he's like, yeah. He said, well, what if you put like a bunch of suds in there and bubbles? And it's just, and it's like, this imaginative thing. And but for her, she's like, oh, come on. Like, come on now.
Dude, right before I left tonight, all right, Kristen was running a bath for Credence. Okay. Yeah. She put a ton of bubble bath in it.
Yeah.
Right? And I wanted to say that. The last thing I heard before I came here was Credence looking at that bath and saying, that's a lot of bubbles. And then that moment, I'm like, I remember when that used to amp me up as a kid. Like, and that's what you're saying.
Yes.
That's exactly what you're saying. Like,
yes.
Oh my goodness, I'm letting the child lead me here. And that's the beautiful thing about all of it is like, once you start to see Sophia, divine wisdom, once you start to see this, all right, let me just read a little bit. I got to. If I don't, I'm gonna blow up over here. So not C.S. Lewis this time. This is Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton is my guy. Like he's been my guy. No Man is an Island. He was Brennan Manning's guru to him. I mean, Thomas Merton is a very, very popular monk. Had a lot of wonderful writings, but he has wrote on Sophia. It is a poem called Hagia Sophia. Hagia Sophia. So he says, check this out. O blessed, silent one who speaks everywhere. We do not hear the soft voice, the gentle voice, the merciful and feminine. We do not hear mercy or yielding love or non-resistance or non-reprisal. In her there are no reasons and no answers, yet she is the candor of God's light, the expression of His simplicity. We do not hear the uncomplaining pardon that bows down the innocent visages of the flowers to the dewy earth. We do not see the child who is prisoner in all the people and who says nothing. She smiles. She smiles, for though they have bound her, she cannot be a prisoner. Not that she is strong or clever, but simply that she does not understand imprisonment. The helpless one, abandoned to sweet sleep, him the gentle one will awake, Sophia. All that is sweet in her tenderness will speak to him on all sides in everything. That's what we're saying. Without ceasing, and he will never be the same again. He will have awakened not to conquest and dark pleasure, but to the impeccable, pure simplicity of one consciousness, in all, and through all. One wisdom, one child, one meaning, one sister. The stars rejoice in their setting and in the rising of the sun. The heavenly lights rejoice in the going forth of one man to make a new world in the morning. Because he has come out of the confused primordial dark night into consciousness. He has expressed the clear silence of Sophia in his own heart. He has become eternal. Now the wisdom of God, Sophia, comes forth, reaching from end to end mightily. She wills to be also the unseen pivot of all nature, the center and the significance of all the light that is in all and for all, that which is the poorest and the humblest, that which is the most hidden in all things is nevertheless most obvious in them and quite manifest, for it is their own self that stands before us, naked and without care. One more. Sophia, the feminine child, is playing in the world. Obvious and unseen. Playing at all times before the Creator. Her delights are to be with the children of men. She is their sister. The core of life that exists in all things is tenderness, mercy, virginity, the light, the life, considered as passive, as received, as given, as taken, as inexhaustibly renewed by the gift of God. Sophia is gift, is spirit. She is God-given and God himself as gift. God as all and God reduced to nothing, inexhaustible nothingness. Humility as the source of unfailing light.
So when you read, all right, so Isaiah 52, I think starting at verse 12 or 14, whatever it is, all the way into chapter 53 is the hymn of the suffering servant, which is superimposed onto Jesus, because all the stuff, all that. But most would stop right there, right? You stop at the end of chapter 53 when you read it, because that's the hymn of the suffering servant. That's the end, right? He suffers. So you reflect on that on Good Friday. Jesus dies, right? Yeah. The very next thing is the prophecy continues into chapter 54. And if I'm not mistaken, it's 54:1, where it says the very first thing that he says is, "Sing, O barren, you who could not conceive." So then it flips the story from being just about the death of a Messiah or the death of a Savior, and flips it into, through this death, now the one who could not conceive is giving birth, and not just giving birth to one Christ, but giving birth to a humanity of Christ, giving birth to all of the children through this divine being, this divine wisdom, this divine mother. And so in the sophiology idea, he connects it back to Mary as mother of not just Christ, but how she gives birth to all of us through divine wisdom. Yeah. And so that's kind of what he gets at in that part. But Irenaeus did the same thing. He talked about, and he had written about this martyr named Blandina, who was a young teenage girl, suffered horribly in France, and was ultimately put to death. But how, even in the beating and the suffering and everything that she went through, it was the tormentors that were wearing themselves out.
Wow.
Because she would not let go of her confession, and how she has nothing. She literally has nothing in life. She is a poor girl, teenage girl at that. So she has no status. She has nothing that you can, for one, this is what he was getting at, there's nothing to tempt her with. She's not even at a place where she even fully understands what money and status and all this other stuff is. For one, she realizes as a female in the 1st or 2nd century that she's not going to have anything anyway. Yeah. So there's nothing that you can tempt her with to try and pull her away from her confession of love in Christ.
Yeah.
So the way Irenaeus writes about it, it says it gets all the way to this point where she dies, obviously, and how in her death that she goes to the mother, and how it's the mother, and he does the same thing with Sophia and compares it to Mary, and how she presents these children, and that he talks about all the martyrs, not just her, but how they all become the children of God, presented to Christ, presented to God through the one who was the barren one, who could not give birth. Now she's giving birth to all of these through suffering, giving birth to all of us through suffering. The one who could not give birth, the one who could not bear children, she gives birth through the suffering. So it's suffering, for me at least, it obviously, like I said Sunday, I'm not telling everybody just to go and die, and that's going to be that's how you become a true Christian, is you got to die. But there's that language that's there, and it's fitted into it, and it's fitted into Romans chapter 6 about how his death was our death, and how we've been moved into death by dying with him. And when we go through the symbol of baptism, that it becomes, the symbol becomes a reality. You become a time traveler. You go back in time to the death of Christ right here in the present, and then you transmit yourself into the future of your own physical death, but also your own physical rising, when Jesus descends at the voice of the archangel, and we're all the dead in Christ rise. So it's this ultimate time travel of going backwards and forwards in this one symbol of going into the water.
Yes.
But it's also the idea of Israel leaving Egypt, leaving bondage, but also the other thing that Egypt represented. It represented opulence. It represented wealth. It represented power, and power's chasing them down. Power's trying to get them to come back, because we had control of these people. We used them for the best that we could get out of them. We're squeezing them and getting all the juice that we can out of this. It was chasing them down until finally the water splits and they're saved in the water. They're saved, and so now when the water crashes back in, they're saved by going through the water. We're saved by going through baptism. We're brought into the Spirit. We're brought into newness of life, and that's what he says in Romans 6. You live a fresh life, newness of life, like a child. It's like being born all over again, being born from above, and you've got all this symbolism that connects it all back to this barren woman who gives birth to all these kids. And now we all get to be children again through the suffering. And there is suffering. It's Christ's suffering, but there's also our suffering, and we recognize our suffering. Yeah. Our suffering, it says that though he were a son, he learned obedience by the things that he suffered. Yeah. In Luke 24, he gets to the end of the story there, and he's getting to the Emmaus Road. And he's talking to these two on the road to Emmaus, and they don't recognize him. They have no idea who he is. So he asked them, and he's asking them questions, and he kind of laughs at them. He said, "Didn't you hear what he said?" He's referring to himself, of course, and they have no idea that it's him. Yeah. But he said, "But didn't you hear what he said? And didn't you know the scriptures? And it said that he had to suffer. Mm-hmm. Don't you know that he had to suffer these things?" Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah. And they kind of just dismiss it, and they just keep talking. And for me, I think that Jesus realizes in that moment, they didn't catch it with my words. Yeah. I'm going to have to show them again. Yeah. They saw it on the cross. They're hearing these words, but I'm going to have to show them again. So it's when they go into the house, and it says they ask him, "Would you bless the bread and break it?" He blesses, he breaks the bread. His body is broken right in front of them. So this symbol takes place in front of them all over again. And suddenly, they recognize him. They recognize the broken body. And as soon as they recognize the brokenness, the suffering, suddenly his physicality vanishes. Yeah. You don't need the physical Jesus anymore because you're recognizing the suffering Jesus. Yeah. And when you recognize the suffering, you recognize your own suffering. And then you realize that nobody's seen God and lived. So it's through my own suffering. It's through my own death. And the death that I'm connected with him on the cross is also connected to his resurrection. It's also connected to him rising from the ashes, rising up from everything that he suffered and living in newness of life. Yep. And like I said, it's him vanishing. Yeah. That gets me. Yeah. It's him being there present, and now we don't need the physical him. Yep. There's no need for him anymore, and that's of his own recognition because he vanishes. Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise he would have remained. Yes. But you don't need it anymore because now you recognize the suffering Jesus. Yeah. And when you recognize the suffering Jesus, you're seeing God. Yeah. You're seeing God in somebody else. You're seeing the suffering Christ in somebody else. And you're not chasing after your life, but you're losing it. You're letting it go.
And that's the Luke 9. I'm going to read that in the Mirror. He says, Luke 9:23, he said, "He then looked everyone in the eye and said to them, 'Joining me in close companionship in your daily walk involves perceiving my mission as fully representing you,'" which is your sophiology. Yeah. "Get over and done with any idea of self that contradicts your true I amness. Here is how you do it. Lift up your cross once and for all by seeing it mirrored in mine." My cross is your cross. Yeah. And the word for joining there is opiso, to regard with close attention, to mimic, to be magnetically drawn after, like the child that's drawn in, or the babe. Yeah. Babes and suckling. The suckling. Babe. Yeah. And it's from the word optonomai, which is to gaze at something remarkable. He goes on in verse 24, "Trying to keep the self of your own making intact is a lost cause to begin with. Yeah. Losing yourself in me," losing is winning. Losing is living. Sorry, yeah. Losing is living. Yeah. "Losing yourself in me is realizing that I am the source of who you are by design. Yeah. This is your saving grace." Yeah. Here's the bottom line. How does prostituting who you really are translate into any profit when all you've gained is the momentary sham applause of the entire religious world? Shame and glory are opposites. How foolish it will be for someone to exchange the glory of the Father and his celestial host of saints, this includes the entire spectrum of the prophetic word, for a fleeting sensation of the approval of the religious world of the day, by being embarrassed about me and my conversation as the Son of Man. The kingdom of God is not a future event beyond your reach. You don't have to wait till you're dead to see it.
Right.
Some of you standing here are about to dramatically witness what I'm talking about. And dramatically witness is that horeo, to stare, to gaze with wonder, to encounter, to see for yourself.
Horeo. It makes me think of the word horizon.
Yeah, that's
it's
good.
Like,
that's good.
I don't think that it's connected, but that's at least what it brings to mind. Is the word horizon.
Yeah,
which I heard. There's this singer that I've kind of gotten into. He's his name is Foy Vance, and he's just folk singing, folk music, and I really love his songs. But he has this song called I think it's called "Standing on the Horizon" or "Looking Out at the Horizon," something like that.
Yeah.
Then he goes to the spot in Ireland where he was raised, and where he says before these houses were here, and he said there was nothing. He said you could just see all the way to the end. And he said, for me, he said, sitting on these steps, he said that was the horizon, because what he says in the song is that we smoked the same cigarettes, we spoke the same language, and felt like I felt like a foreigner there, because he's thinking of something else. He's thinking out on the horizon. Beyond. There's something beyond this conversation, because then he starts talking about the conversation that he had. And he said right here, sitting on these steps, I'm thinking of my friend who stood here and was talking about whatever the girl's name was, that Angie, something like that, and how weird it was to kiss her with her braces. And he goes, wait a minute, I was dating Angie when she got her braces. he said, I learned a whole lot about love right there. He said, so suddenly he's brought out of the horizon and into the moment. And he's like, wait a minute, I was dating Angie back then. And so it's like it brings this whole idea of feeling like a foreigner while staring out at the beyond. It's like, here's just regular conversation, but I feel like there's something out there.
Yeah.
And here he's getting caught into the mundane, caught into the regular, caught into the average everyday. I caught myself doing it this week because my back was hurting, and it's hurting pretty bad. So I had an appointment scheduled with a chiropractor, and I was at work, and I was talking to a guy, and I gave the statement that we automatically give. He's the one that called me out on it, but this wasn't like a divine thing that happened. It was just conversation with a guy who happens to be from South Africa too, by the way. We're sitting there. I was getting old, man, and he's older than me. And he said, no, that's just, he said, no, that's just a mindset. That's just a mindset. You need to let that go. You need to let that go. And I said, you're right. I said, you're 100% right. There's no point in saying it. It's like, I'm going to go to the chiropractor. I'll be right in about a week. Everything's going to be fine. All the tension, it'll go away. The pain will go away. And I'll be back I'll be able to do yoga and work out and do whatever else that I was doing before. It's just a mindset. He said, you just got to let that stuff go. You got to let that go. You're not getting older. Yeah. I said, amen. Yeah. Hey, this guy's preaching to me right here at work and saying the stuff that we're saying. You got to let go of those things. Got to let go of those mindsets. Got to let.
The desire and attachment is what brings suffering. That's what the Buddhists say.
Yep.
Desire and attachment is what brings suffering. And attachment can be to anything. It could be a thought process. It could be a pattern of thinking. It could be a mindset, right? Yeah. That if I'm attached to this thing, it will bring about suffering. So I have to learn to let these things go. Like you said, I learn to let go of these things. And then I can, realize enlightenment or whatever. Of course, the idea in Buddhism is that there is an end to suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the end to suffering is like what you said. It's when I finally do get planted in the earth and I can finally cease from my labors, and then God can really do something with the seed of who I am, right? Because this is the whole.
It is, but that's part of the representation of it in baptism is that if you really do reckon yourselves dead, like Paul said, you truly do that, then there's no competition with yourself of how well I died to my flesh today or how well I put the flesh under subjection or any of that stuff. That's not even part of the conversation, but it's just lived out in the living thereof.
Yeah.
It's just lived out in the living. Josh had sent this earlier, and it was St. Francis in the Canticle of Love, and said, if it is true that I am mad, O supreme wisdom, the fault is yours. It dates from the day when you wounded me, and I made a pact with love. Myself, and self is in the parentheses, myself has been taken away, and I am clothed in you. So
Mm.
it's the release through the wound. I'm wounded to know in all of my trying and all of my effort and all of the stuff that I've tried to do that you're not going to be able to do this on your own. You're not really going to be able to do this, period.
Yeah.
You don't have the capacity to be able to truly be this perfect person and this perfect Christian, or whatever these ideas, the report card Christianity, the report card religion. You're not going to be able to get all A's. You're not going to make all A honor roll. No matter how hard you try, you're going to mess something up. There's going to be something desperately wicked in that great little heart of yours.
Yep.
So it's the wisdom that wounds you, that says and forces you to make a pact with love. Now I let go of all the report cards. I let go of all the other stuff, and I make a pact with something greater. It says knowledge will cease, tongues, all this stuff. It's all going to be done for greater things to step in: faith, hope, and love. The greatest is love.
Yep. That's the covenant.
I love you. I love you.
Wonderful. You got nothing?
You're good.
Oh, man. Well, I've enjoyed this. Again, enjoyed Sunday. If you didn't get a chance to check that out, if you weren't able to be here with us, please go and watch that previous video and catch up. And then you can come back and revisit this conversation again. But thank you so much to everybody that tuned in. Thank you for everybody that's here tonight. Say it with me. I love him.
I love him.
Because he first.
Because he first.
Loved me.
Love me.
God bless you.
God bless you. My people, my tribe. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. It's all mixed up. Yeah.
They mixed them all up.
Oh, Lord. Have mercy.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.